is Polly. I'm a creative specialist at Castlewood's Makerspace, and I'd like to share with you today how to use Adobe Illustrator to create your Glowforge laser cut designs. So the first thing we want to make sure we do is download Illustrator if you do not have it already installed on your computer. Illustrator does come with a 7-day free trial if it's your first time signing up for it. This will give you plenty of time to get somewhat familiar with the software and be able to use it for a laser cut project. Okay, so right after you've downloaded that, the other thing you want to make sure you download is our Glowforge laser template. And you could find that on our Glowforge laser cut tab in our blog post, in the Makerspace blog post. So once you've opened that, I kind of want to explain what we're looking at here. So the white shape is a canvas. It's the artboard, and that artboard is sized to 20 by 12 inches. And that's the size of the honeycomb bed on the Glowforge laser cutter. So that's the size that you're seeing the white canvas here. The next thing you're seeing is this rectangle piece right here. And this is the maximum printable area, which is 11 inches deep by 19.5 inches wide. And this is essentially what the maximum capability of the Glowforge being able to engrave and cut, or just cut whatever project it is that you're doing on the Glowforge. Okay. The other thing I want to make sure we do to make sure we get a little bit familiar with Illustrator and you have the correct properties available to you. On the right hand panel here, this is essentially what I have. It's kind of like what I've customed to make sure I have for all of my designs and my use on Illustrator. And this is definitely something you could customize so it fits your style, your learning style. And when you first open it up, you'll most likely have properties. Let me move myself over. You'll most likely have properties, you'll have layers, and libraries. What we're going to focus on mainly will be layers. It's very important that when it comes to laser cut designs and appointments, layers is definitely helpful for us and for the machine to know what it is that you want to do with the files on the document. So we'll go over this a little bit later. But the other thing I want to make sure we have is if we go over to Windows, this is essentially from Actions all the way down here with a little arrow. These are all properties you could add to your panel, to your right-hand panel here. And we want to make sure we have is Align, which I have right here. And with Align comes Transform and Pathfinder. So Align will be very helpful, making sure everything is centered, everything is going the way you want it to on the design. The other thing we want to make sure we have under the Windows panel here is, let's see, a stroke. I want to make sure we have our strokes here. And then the other thing we want to make sure we have is our color. Alright, so color will be CMYK. You'll also have a color guide, but we won't be using that today. We'll be mainly using color, and that will be helpful to distinguish what will be engraved, what will be cut, and what will be scored, if there are any scoring that you'll be doing on a laser cut job. Okay. Oh, and one more thing. Under the Windows, we will also have text, or type in this case. So I have the characters, and with characters comes, all of the text. You have examples there of how it will look like. You can also put the type of size as well, and then down here is the setting the lead, so how far apart you want the text to be. And then this will be just in case you do want to add text to your engraving or cut. It's just an optional thing that we're going to have there. So yeah, now you'll have a few properties on your right hand panel that'll be helpful for you. It'll be very accessible for you to kind of use when it comes to the design process. Okay. All right. So again, we're going to talk a lot about layers, but in this case, on this file here, on the Glowforge laser template file, we have little eyeballs. So if we click on the one that's highlighted, it will kind of disappear the type that I have, the information that I have there. Okay, and we are going to hide that for now. And then the other layer I have here is the printable area, right? And that's essentially that canvas, that artboard. Okay, so now the first things we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create a new layer. So there's a little plus sign right here, right next to the trash. It says create new layer. We're going to create a new one. It automatically layers it based off the number that you have. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and put cut, okay, or vector, whatever. It's just letting you know that whatever is on this layer, you're going to let the machine know this is all going to be cut. So for this project, I decided I want to do some coasters, right, a set of coasters. So coasters are usually 4 inches by 4, like 4 by 4 or 5 by 5, you know, it kind of depends what it is that you're going to be putting on it, kind of cup, but they're usually standard 4 by 4. So the other thing I want to show you here is on the left side panel, you're going to have a few icons, and this is letting you know other possibilities that you could do with the software, right? So we have the little selection tool. You could also use a space bar to kind of move your artboard around. The one we're going to look at is the rectangle, or the shape tool. And if you hold on to the mouse, this little panel comes up, and you'll have rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse tool. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipse tool because I do want circular coasters. So if you just click on it once, you'll have this little notification box, and then essentially it's prompting you, okay, like what's the size that you want to have for your ellipse, right? So I mentioned 4 by 4 is the standard coaster size. So I'm going to go ahead and place OK. And it has defaulted my circle as a red infill and no stroke. Okay, so your Illustrator might have done a little bit different. It might have been black, it might have been purple, whatever the color is. We're going to go ahead and switch that, right? So if yours was red, that's great. You could go ahead and just swap the fill and stroke. So by swapping that, now we're left with a red outline of a circle. Now, one of the good things I kind of want to discuss is the color. So red is automatically assumed to be a cut color on the laser cutters. So it's good that on our layers panel here, right, if you go down the little arrow, if you use a little drop down arrow here, you could see your ellipse tool is under the cut file. Okay, so it's a 4 by 4. I'm going to go ahead and leave that right there. If, let's say, for example, I'll make a copy of that, and what I did to make a copy was Control C and Control V if you are on a Windows PC, and on a Mac it'd be Alt C and then Alt V. Okay, so for example, let's say your fill was black, right? So now you have a black filled circle. To be able to swap colors, you could just double click like I did here on that square, and you could choose a color, right? The red color that I had mentioned, which is designated cut color, and just click OK, right? And then if your fill color, or your stroke color is with this little line, this red line across, it just means that there is no color for that stroke line. So we're going to go ahead and just swap it again, right? So yeah, you just want to make sure that whatever your stroke color is, that it's designated for either cut or engrave. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and delete that. Okay, now again we're going to go over to our layers panel, and we are going to include a new layer. And this new layer, we're going to go ahead and call it engrave. So this will be any and all of the designs or text that you want engraved to your coaster. So this is where a little fun gets included, right? You get to explore some of the designs that you want to incorporate. And so the first thing I like to do is just go through Google. I just typed here mountain clip art. And I'm going to go over what's going to work and what will not work on a laser cutter. So let's go over what will not work based off the search here. So anything with color like this mountain here, this free mountain clip art with a cloud, and it's blue and it's got some gray and some like periwinkle on it, yeah, that's not going to work. Anything with color like this, you're always going to want to, it's always going to be a little bit more work because you're going to have to remove those colors. So you want to make sure you don't see or have anything with color. You want to make sure you have it black and white. And if it's easier for you searching black and white, you could go ahead and do that as well on Google search. And any of these will essentially work, right? So let's say, for example, I'm going to go over with, let's find something I like, maybe something kind of playful, something like this. Okay, I could go ahead and save that. Okay, maybe I'll go and save it from here. So you could save the image as, and just remember where it was that you saved it, right? And you want to make sure it's a JPEG image or PNG, you know, something with an image on it. And I'm just going to call this, I'll just call this Playful Mountains. Looks like a little kid drew it. So I'm just going to save it on my desktop, which is easy to find. And I'm going to go ahead and click save. Okay. And once I'm in the save, once I save that, I'm going to jump back into Illustrator. I'm going to place. So if you go over File, scroll down over here to Place, which is also Shift Control P on a PC. I'm going to go ahead and find that image. So I saved it under desktop and I named it Playful Mountains. I'm going to go ahead and place it. And once I hit OK to place it, it's kind of going to be hovering over with a little cursor. You could just place it anywhere that's visible to you and just click on it. And just extend it if it's too small. And you'll see this little X bounding box around it. We want to make sure we do a bit of an image trace before we embed it into the design, right? So on the top panel here, there's a little box that says image trace. Now if I click on that, it's going to trace the image as best as it can, right? And it's going to say tracing results. So if that looks great, I'm going to go ahead and expand it. Okay, and now I have the image, right? Now there's a few other steps that we do need to take here just to be sure that it is on its own. You see how if I take it outside of the artboard, it still has this white kind of background, we don't want that. We want to have it all vector, right? We want to make sure we have it all as just the design, so no background. So again, under here in the engrave, you see how it's a group because I've embedded it. You're going to have all these paths, and if you click on each one, if you highlight each one on the right here with a little circle, it's going to let you know where that path is. So I'm not too concerned for all the black paths. What I care more about is those compound ones, right? Those compound ones are all of those filled in shapes that I don't want. So I want to make sure the ones I'm going to delete, right? And you could test it out by the little eyeball, right? The ones that I'm going to delete, I'm going to highlight that and I'm just going to delete it. Then you have another one here. So this compound is actually a path, right, of all those black, all the black outline of the mountains. Then the other one here is the background. Yeah, I don't want that, so I'll go ahead and highlight that and delete it. There's more paths here. Yep, I don't need that either. Anything white, I don't need. I'm just going to go ahead and find all of that, and I'm just selecting it and deleting it. And there's another one. Okay, delete that. Great. So now my design here is on its own. You know, it has no background. It's not going to interfere with the design process when we take it into Glowforge laser cut software. So there's this little bounding box around it, right? And this is where you could scale it small, large, and I'm going to go ahead and bring my circle. I'm going to make sure I put it over it, and I'm going to just shrink this a little bit more, and I'm going to assume that that's the center. I'm not quite sure, but the best way to make sure that it is centered is if you highlight, if you click and drag your mouse over both of those elements, right? The circle and the mountains. And now remember that align right here on the right hand side panel, we had selected align as part of those properties. Well, here, this is the best way to make sure everything is centered or to align to wherever it is that you want it to go. So for this case, I do want it horizontally aligned in the center, and there you go. Now, if this looks great, I'm going to leave it alone. And this will be my first design, right? I'm going to leave that right there. And in my layers panel, again, if this looks great, I'm going to leave it like that, right? And you could continue this process. You could just, you know, copy paste the cut file and then move this over to wherever you want to do it. And then again, the engrave, if you want the same designs, you could just copy and paste it. Again, you know, using the center, align center, that looks pretty good. So let's say I want a pair of those. The other thing I want to show you, if you do run into issues when it comes to grabbing some design work on Google search, let's see, let me find something where it might be an issue, right? Let's find something here. Here. So this has a transparency background. Anything with these little dots, or well, they're not dots, they're little squares, white and gray squares. Those are called transparencies. And if you go ahead and save this image, save image as a JPEG, I'm going to call this, I'll just call them mountains. Again, make sure you know where you're saving these. I am saving them on my desktop. I do find it very useful, especially if it's like a one-time thing. the desktop is probably the best way to save them and then delete them later on. Okay, so now that that has been downloaded, I'm going to jump back into Illustrator, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure in your layers panel, right, that you are on the engrave section. You could always move your designs around if you make a mistake. So let's try that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to be on the cut file, and I'm going to go ahead and file, place my image right here. Make sure I find my mountains and place it anywhere on the document. It doesn't matter. Okay, now let's say I made a mistake and I'm like, oh, oops, I placed the design file on the cut file. Well, on the drop down here, you could find your file that's been selected, that linked file, and I'm going to just click and drag it to the engrave. And you could tell that you've changed its location because the bounding box, like the color of the bounding box, has changed. So over here on the layers section, you'll see everything that is cut is a neon green, and that is true because all of these ellipses, all of their bounding boxes are indeed neon, right? And then in the engrave section, everything is like an indigo blue, right? So you want to make sure that it is in fact in the correct spot. Okay, so going back to fixing an image that you like, but it has some features there that you want to get rid of, like that transparency, right? Like all of this, we don't want any of that. So again, I'm going to move myself over. So again, I'm going to go ahead and image trace. And there you go. Once that's all gone, you could expand your image. And again, we're going to probably have to go back into that design, into that group, and find all of those white paths that we don't want. And it might be, it might be helpful for you to see it if you remove it from the artboard, right? So you could see all of that white stuff. We don't want it. So we're going to go ahead and find that. All right. So here's the box, and again with the eye tool, you could click it on and off, and make sure that is in fact the one that you want to delete. And go ahead and delete it. And now you just have all those paths, right? All those little points that makes up your mountains. Okay. Now again, we're going to just drag it back over to our artboard, and we're going to go ahead and scale it down just a bit. And again, we're going to copy and paste our coaster size, right over here, and we're going to drag this little guy over to the inside the circle. And again, we could go ahead and align using our panel here on the right hand side, align. We're going to click on align objects, horizontally align center, and it's centered. Now let's say, for example, we want to have some text inside that circle. Let's see, character. We're going to go over to characters, and you do have some sample fonts there that you could try out. And I don't know, you could find something playful. You could also download types. I mean, if you start doing that, you're going to go down the rabbit hole of just looking at fonts, and it's going to be great. Just make sure you give yourself a time limit of how often you find fonts. So on the left hand side panel here, we have there's a capital T. It's called a type tool, and the shortcut is T for type, right? Pretty intuitive. And you could just click anywhere on the artboard, and this lorem ipsum text automatically pops up. once you click on it. So you could just select all, which is Control A, and then backspace, you know, and then write. Type whatever you like. The mountains are calling. Oops. Just something like that. And yeah, I feel this text, the size of the text is too small. And if you see up here on your top panel, you'll have the character, which is the type of font you're using. There's also regular, italic, bold. There's different types of font styles that you could utilize, and then right next to it is the font size. And so you could kind of experiment and see, kind of gives you a preview, right, of how it will look like. I think 18 is too big. I could go ahead and put 16. And again, let's like move this over. I'm going to select my type, my mountains, and my ellipse tool, and I'm going to align. So remember that panel there, align objects, horizontally align, and there you go. So that looks pretty good. Now, you may be wondering when I move these images here, these elements, what those little pink intersect parts are, and it's essentially just something that will line up all of your elements. Okay, and okay, last but not least, we must save our file, right? Okay, so by saving files, we want to go over to the top right over here, or I'm sorry, top left, where it says File, and we want to save as. Now, you don't want to save it as an AI file. That is an Illustrator file. The Glowforge will not read those types of files. So you could either save it as a PDF or an SVG. A PDF, oh, and by the way, a PDF or SVG, you could still edit them on Illustrator. It's not the final, you know, it's not the final cut. You could always edit them with Illustrator. And then you just want to go ahead and rename it. So I'm going to call this Mountain Coasters. And then just make sure you know where you're saving them. I'm going to go ahead and save it on my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And then a new pop-up will appear. It will essentially give you the default settings for saving it as a PDF. Just go ahead and click Save PDF. And you'll know it has saved it because it has renamed your artboard. Okay, so that's how we use Illustrator for laser cutting designs. I highly encourage you to try it out. You know, make full use of the 7-day trial period that you have for Illustrator. If you do have some issues or you get some confusion, I always recommend, you know, reaching out to us at arapahoelibraries.org/makerspace, and you can get in touch with us via our contact us page. If you have a question, feel free to place it here, but if you have something more specific to, let's say, the appointment that we make, or what the design file you're creating for laser cut, please fill out the virtual appointment form, first, last name, your email, and then just make sure you click on Design Help, which is the first one. What can we help you with? And then just tell us a little bit about your project. Just get in the habit of doing that. It will definitely help us kind of figure out what is the best way we can help you. And then if you do have any dates and times that work best for you, go ahead and include them. Right now, a lot of our appointments are virtual, so we do have the capability of Zoom, Loom, anything like that. And if there's anything else that we should know, please include it. And then just go ahead and click Submit. We will receive it the day of, and then just give us about 2 days, a day or two to respond to you. Yeah, and then we'll get in touch via email. And if it does require an in-person appointment, we will schedule that as well. So I hope this has been insightful for you. I hope you guys get to explore and create in some way with the Glowforge. Well, yes, thank you so much, and let's keep in touch.